Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
As Jesus continued his journey to Jerusalem, he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. As he was entering a village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned, glorifying God in a loud voice. And he fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said in reply, 10 were cleansed, were they not? Where are the other 9? Has none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God? Then he said to him, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Right.
Has anybody here ever seen anyone in person with leprosy? Okay, good. I didn't think so. It's largely eradicated in our world today. I think it was simply antibiotics, actually. But it's a wicked, wicked disease, right? It is a wicked disease. Basically guaranteed to end in death. And, it disfigures your body and, basically it's almost like it rots off appendages and stuff when it goes on so long. And it spreads fairly easily through bodily fluids, and it's wicked. It is really wicked. So the lepers outside the town were quarantined from the rest of the community, and that also meant that they were separated from worship with God as well. So they're cut off from relationships with other people, and they're cut off from relationship with God because they were unclean. They weren't able to worship in the temple. They're ostracized, cut off, set apart in the most isolated of ways. So when Jesus comes by and they, heard somewhere along the way that this man could do something about their plight, they call out to him. Now, if you want to learn more about how nasty leprosy is, you can read about it in the book of Leviticus. There's all sorts of descriptions about colors and fluids and hairs and moles and what the priest needed to do for the leper in terms of prescribing how to be healed from it. So when Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priests, they assume that they're going to the priest because the priest would examine their sores and make a determination of whether or not they actually had leprosy and what they could do about it according to the law. And along the way, the one becomes aware of the healing that he's experienced. Jesus says 10 were healed, but only one is really aware of what's happened, right? And that point itself, 10 going on to wherever they went on to, maybe a former way of life, maybe, I don't know where they were. It doesn't really matter. But, that experience of the 9 going on and the 1 returning just makes me wonder what was really going on in the desires of their hearts, right? What did they really want? And I think the 9 just wanted to be free from the struggle of the disease, right? They wanted to be free from isolation. They wanted to be free from pain. They wanted to be free from, the pain from being cut off from people and God, right? But they wanted to be free from those things. And now that they're free and they don't have the leprosy anymore, they can go on with their life. The one, however, and maybe he didn't realize this until he had been healed, but he gets more in touch with a greater desire in his heart. And he realizes, at least after the fact, that what he was wanting all along wasn't just freedom from the burden of his disease, but his desire was pointed to something more. Right? The freedom from the disease isn't going to satisfy the ultimate desire of his heart. But through this encounter with Jesus, the living God, he's come to know something more than he's ever known through anything else he's ever asked for or pursued. Right? He's gotten a glimpse of something beyond his wildest imagination. Something that, for lack of a better term, feels so good. An encounter with the living God. We may have eradicated leprosy in our own world to a large extent anyway, but we still have spiritual leprosy. Right? I mean, that's really how sin can be described. Sin is a nasty, nasty illness. I don't know if you guys knew that, but sin is really gross. It looks really bad, right? Sometimes it's like, in a spiritual sense, rotting off appendages and sores and oozing and all kinds of stuff, right? And it cuts us off from each other, and it cuts us off from God, and it isolates us. It isolates us. But the good news is that Jesus has an antidote for the disease of sin, and pretty much all of us have experienced it, right? It's called baptism, right? And just like the lepers in the Old Testament would be prescribed to go down into the pool and be cleansed, and like Naaman came up out of the waters and his skin was renewed and became like a small child, so our soul is renewed and cleansed through the sacrament of baptism. Now, for most of us who are baptized as infants, I recognize that it's really tough as a 6-week-old baby or up to several years to really be in touch with what we really desire, right? I recognize that. A six-week-old baby doesn't know what they want, right? They don't know what they want. All they want is food, drink, and all drink. All drink and a clean diaper, right? That's all they want. They don't even know it. So, I don't criticize us for not being in touch with our deepest desires from the beginning, but somewhere along the way, over the course of our lives, we have to come to an awareness of what has been done for us, right? That in the cleansing of our spiritual leprosy, we have already encountered the living God. We've been given a gift of freedom from the burden of sin, in a certain sense, a freedom from, but also a freedom for. Jesus, through the sacrament of baptism, has given us access to the very thing that we desire more than anything else. God created us for communion with Him. He created us to be with Him. And that is, objectively, the greatest desire of our hearts. Now, along the way, we have numbed that desire with so many different things. Right? We numb that greatest desire with, anything that gets in the way. I mean, any form of sin, but, particularly relationships and sensual realities, right? Food, drink, sexuality, whatever it is, and relationships. Those things we burrow into and almost like cover dirt over this greater desire that we have. Or maybe it's like as a little kid, you knew greater desires in your heart. Desire just to go free and maybe even an awareness of having been delighted in by God or someone else even just in the world. But there's this freedom in a child that, whatever we experience in our lives, sometimes the sins of other people, not only just our own, but the sins of other people, kind of put that kid to bed, right? We put him in his room and say, I don't really want to see you because you remind me of something greater, right? There's a greater desire that we have to be free and to be with the Lord and be delighted in Him and take delight. But over the course of our lives, we cover it over. We put that child away, and we don't really know what we really want. I think Jesus gives us an invitation today to just open that place up in our hearts, right? To ask him to remind us of what we really want. That nothing that we have burrowed into or sought satisfaction in this life is going to fulfill that greatest desire of our hearts. But that having been made for God alone, he is the one thing that we should pursue in that way, seeking ultimate satisfaction. See, this is the beauty of what God has given us, because we ultimately want to be one with God, and he wants to be one with us. And that's so much of what the Eucharist is all about. God literally comes to us, but he says, take me in to you, right? Let's become one. Let me fulfill that greatest desire of your hearts. Let it remind you today that you desire something greater than probably what you've been pursuing throughout your life. And that's for all of us. We're always distracted from the greatest desire. So we need to let him pull our heads out of the ground where we burrowed into and set our sights on something more. And along the way, as he comes to us, to have him remind us of the satisfaction that he can provide in fulfilling the ultimate desires of our hearts.